Hello, I'm Louise Watt and welcome to Correspondents, where we talk about the news and what's going on behind the news with journalists around the region. In Indonesia, Defense Minister Prabowo Subianto has claimed victory in presidential elections. He's a former army general who turned himself into a cuddly grandfather figure during the campaign. But his presumed victory has led to fears that Indonesia, the world's third largest democracy, could be backsliding on its democratic values. To discuss this and more, today I'm joined by Randy Mulyanto, a freelance journalist based in Jakarta. Randy, welcome to the show.
Hi, good morning, Louise.
Now, could you start by telling us a little about this presumed winner? Who is Prabowo Subianto?
Right, so Prabowo Subianto is Indonesia's current defense minister under the outgoing President Joko Widodo administration. He has basically become one of the most known politicians in the country. So back in 2014 and 2019, he actually lost twice to the outgoing president, but now he is one of the president's most trusted ministers.
And he's a bit of a controversial figure in Indonesia because of his past as a former Special Forces Army general.
Yeah, so he was related to the New Order dictatorship. He was the husband of one of the late dictator Suharto's daughters. So obviously for many people, it is bringing lots, basically, worries that he is going to take the country slightly backwards in terms of the democratic governance. But obviously, it remains to be seen. He's basically, related to the dictatorship. So obviously, some Indonesians who lived through that era, especially, will definitely have some concerns about that.
He was a feared general. So has he changed, or has he fooled everyone, or is it that a lot of voters just don't care about his past anymore?
If you ask people who lived through the dictatorship, obviously some do still believe that it's just part of his persona, it's just doing all of that for social media gimmicks. But if you talk to young people, obviously they are not aware of that. Many of them are not aware of the alleged abuses that he allegedly committed. But basically, with that being said, many Indonesians obviously have other hopes in job opportunities, a stronger economy, and basically how they could prosper and thrive more in Indonesia. I actually spoke with a few Prabowo supporters in weeks leading up to the election. One of the voters said he was the right candidate because he is firm, he's from the military, he's one of President Joko Widodo's ministers, and so he believes that he's the continuity candidate for that. He's going to at least believe to be able to take some of outgoing President Joko Widodo's policies still intact.
Half of voters, they were aged from 17 to 40. So it was really about attracting the young vote. And part of the reason that Prabowo was seen to reinvent himself was his use of TikTok and Instagram. He posted videos of himself dancing on stage. He posted a video of him stroking a cat, which was seen to cultivate this cuddly grandfather image, although I'm not sure if it looks more like a James Bond villain. But how integral do you think social media was to his presumed victory?
I don't think social media is the only factor that has brought him the, most votes in those quick count results. But I've seen a few comments on social media, from TikTok users, basically, expressing their admiration of Prabowo's cute character in those, dance moves, with those social media videos. So I think that's one of the factors, and especially those who did not experience the New Order dictatorship, those who did not live throughout the era. Obviously, perhaps for them, again, Prabowo Subianto is one of President Jokowi's ministers, so they believe that he's actually a good person to some.
Another factor seen in his presumed victory was the tacit support of the current president, Joko Widodo, President Jokowi, you just mentioned him. Now, presidents aren't supposed to throw their support behind candidates in Indonesia, but Jokowi's son was Prabowo's running mate. Now, if Jokowi had thrown his tacit support behind one of the other two candidates, do you think that would have been a factor? Would they have got elected? Because Jokowi is still very popular.
That's right. And his approval rating is over 60, over 70, even some say at around 80%. He actually has, been involved in developing parts of Indonesia through his infrastructure development initiatives. For example, if you go to the easternmost region of Papua, you'll realize that he's actually done quite a lot of things throughout his almost 10 years in power.
As you say, he still has really good approval ratings, which is quite impressive given that he's coming up to, well, he's in the twilight of his presidency, shall we say. Some people have called him Asia's Barack Obama. Why is that?
President Jokowi is Indonesia's first head of state, not from the political elite backgrounds. He started everything as a furniture salesman and entrepreneur, and then he rose to the ranks and became the governor of Jakarta before he won the presidency twice. So many Indonesians saw him as someone who could bring drastic changes, lots of changes, especially as he's not coming from the political elite background. So he has lots of fresh ideas. Infrastructure development is one of his successful outcomes of his presidency, if you will. If you go to other parts of Indonesia, those outside Jakarta, you can see that he is trying to build other parts of Indonesia more equally, not just focusing on Java. But obviously, if we ask other Indonesians, many Indonesians will say that, there were a lot of regulations, controversial regulations passed under Jokowi's presidency, like the jobs creation law, as well as what some would say as the weakening of Indonesia's Corruption Eradication Commission. So there are both aspects of his presidency that we need to look into account here.
And as Jokowi has thrown his unprecedented support, it seems, behind Prabowo, is he going away after the elections? Is he going to disappear when his successor takes office in October, or will he be there still behind the scenes somehow?
I believe that will be the case because, Indonesia's past presidents, although they're no longer in the presidential palace, they will still be around. For example, the former president Megawati Soekarno-Putri is still very much the leader of one of Indonesia's largest political parties.
And you mentioned there, Randy, Jokowi, his big infrastructure projects and program, and a lot of that was financed with Chinese money. And something Jokowi is seen to have done is balance relations with both China and the United States. Now, Prabowo, just 4 days after the elections and him declaring victory, he hosted at his residence the Chinese ambassador to Indonesia, Lu Kang. They posed for photos, and there's that cat again. But what do you see are the early signs of where will Prabowo go when it comes to deepening relations with Washington or Beijing?
I think the key word here is continuity because, Indonesia under President Joko Widodo has tried to, maintain good relations with both the world's two superpowers, really. So in terms of Jakarta-Beijing ties, for example, we've seen that, China has invested heavily in Indonesia. China has taken part in building the Jakarta-Bandung high-speed rail, for example, as well as several projects in Indonesia. There are Chinese companies here, but for the US, obviously, Indonesia has military exercises with the United States and several other countries, for example. So Indonesia is trying to make as many friends as possible, that is, trying to balance the ties between the two.
It wasn't just the presidential elections that have taken place. Almost 10,000 people were competing to be lawmakers in Indonesia's parliament. There's 580 seats there. Your reporting honed in on ethnic Chinese Indonesians, who are about 1% of Indonesia's population. How much representation do they have?
Well, before 2000, obviously, I think it was very, very minor. But after the fall of the late dictator Suharto, things have changed for the better for the ethnic Chinese communities. These days you will see a lot of, more, I'm not saying that significantly alive, but basically, there have been more and more ethnic Chinese individuals decided we want to run for parliament, for example, and we've seen several ethnic Chinese MPs and several ethnic Chinese government ministers. So their faces, I think the political representation is getting more visible there, and I think that's a good thing for Indonesia, right? It has always this, motto, unity in diversity, and if you want to grow a country, you need people from every kind of possible background, to take part in developing it.
And what kind of issues were they running on?
One of them was one of them ran with Partai Buruh, or the Labour Party. Basically, she wants better working conditions for Indonesia's white-collar and blue-collar workers. Another one ran with Perindo Party, and he wants to make Indonesia a more attractive destination for foreign investments, as well as trying to impose more taxes on imported products from abroad so that Indonesians could actually a competitive advantage.
Randy, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been great speaking to you. And thanks to you for watching. This has been Correspondents. We hope to see you next time.